the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Coming to you live from a mysterious island that nobody can find unless you already know where it is. It's the Worldview Media Podcast.
Nice.
And we are going to talk about the very first Pirates of the Caribbean because
The classic, the original.
there's a new movie in the franchise coming out. So talking about the one that came out like 20 years ago is
That started it all.
as close as we get to cutting edge.
Sometimes.
Which is really darn close. All right, Pirates of the Caribbean.
The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Curse of the Black Pearl. Many burning questions to answer?
Sure.
Well, I don't know. With me today in studio, behind this microphone is...
Behind what? I'm not behind a microphone.
is my wife Joyce. Hello.
Hello.
It's a nice microphone.
Hello. I'm
And
behind a microphone.
behind that microphone is my daughter Carmen. How are you?
Good.
And behind the smallest microphone is daughter Jordan.
Hello.
And we have only one cat in the studio with us tonight.
That's you.
The coolest cat around.
That's the nicest thing y'all have ever said to me.
It's only because the one cat that's in here. It was a different cat.
All right, so Pirates of the Caribbean, and in this movie, what in the world is this movie about? Okay, so you have this girl, Elizabeth Swann, and from a young age, what's she in, like 18th century England? Is that about right?
Well, yeah, probably so.
And
Well, like real early America is what I would say, probably.
It's in,
Right.
it's
It's
in the,
the
time of
the-
the British colonies in the Caribbean. So,
okay.
Good answer.
yeah. When the British were in everything.
All right.
Not like now.
Not like now.
So, Elizabeth Swann, from an early age, has a fascination with pirates. One might say she romanticizes pirates.
Yes, one might.
And by a series of events, she becomes the possessor of a bit of Aztec gold that later we find out is cursed with a pirate curse.
Yep.
The
Classic
best kind of
pirate
curse.
And hilarity ensues.
As it so often does.
Right.
With pirates.
Pirates on board the cursed ship. Wait, is the Black Pearl cursed?
It's cursed because the crew is cursed.
is cursed. The
Because
ship
of the
itself.
gold. Yeah.
Yeah, the ship itself is just sort of carrying the curse of
Okay,
people.
so there's a...
But you could make an argument that it's cursed. But that's getting into later movies.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, the uncovering of this bit of Aztec gold kind of draws pirates to it. The crew of the Black Pearl, because they're all under the same curse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
turns out that the deposed captain of the Black Pearl is a famous
other
pirate
than-
named Captain Jack Sparrow,
Uh-huh.
played by Johnny Depp. And now this is where one of the burning questions comes in. What in the world is wrong with Captain Jack Sparrow?
Oh, boy.
Why does he look and act so weird?
I think it's the rum.
I don't think that's a question we can finish
Well-
in the amount of time in for this podcast.
I don't
Johnny
know what's
Depp
wrong with
did
him.
play him in a very strange way.
Yeah.
I've heard that the studio went to the makers of the movie before it was released and said, so what's his deal? Is he gay or is he drunk? Or what's his deal?
I think
Because
maybe he's been out at sea so long that he just kind of
his brain is just weird.
has problems with
Yeah, well, and I
balance
had heard that
walking.
too, that he just can't get his, like, land legs
have-
back anymore
Yeah.
and
Well,
stuff.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
I'm not.
He's
This is
got
one of my
land
favorite
legs.
franchises, but they, before this last movie's come out, they've actually done like the adventures of young Jack Sparrow and everything. So there's this huge like backstory canon to everything. So Jack Sparrow is born during a typhoon on a pirate ship. So he's like just spent his entire life on ships and everything. And then also this interaction that he has with this cursed pirate treasure isn't the first like supernatural thing that he's come across. So he's got like a whole bunch of like weird things that he's interacted with, and all that stuff takes its toll. And then also like
His dad.
his dad's crazy, you know, and then plus all the rum and the
Right.
regular health issues that you run into as a pirate.
Yeah. The usual sailor
Scurvy.
troubles. Yeah.
Cabin fever. There's a
Lyme
whole
disease.
there's many ways you could put it. So
Okay, so we also run into Orlando Bloom playing young Will Turner,
Mm-hmm.
son of infamous pirate Bootstrap Bill Turner.
Yep.
And so he's got pirating in the blood. He doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And so these three characters, Elizabeth Swann and Jack Sparrow and Will Turner, are tangled in this summer action adventure comedy
Romance.
and in an attempt to break the curse and get the treasure and avoid capture and hanging as pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Phew. All right,
full
now
time.
one of the things about this curse is that if you're really cursed with this Aztec curse, you're like undead.
Yeah, you're basically a zombie now.
Right,
Well,
but
it's
you
worse than
still
a zombie, though.
you're still
Well-
sentient and you've got all your
well, it's
faculties.
it's blood money that they
Yeah.
paid off to like, hey,
Right.
stop killing us, you know.
Right. So the crew is undead, and you don't see that they're weird until they get in direct moonlight.
Yeah.
And then you can see they're
Something's
like
not
zombies.
natural.
Yes.
Right. Now, so one of the effects of being undead, we learn, is that they can't taste food.
Uh-huh.
And so my question for you is,
Okay.
if you could
Be undead?
live indefinitely here on the earth, not dying, you could live as long as you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one food that you were unable to taste and enjoy the whole time that you're alive.
Uh-huh.
I'd have to pick kumquats.
Well, no.
What would the worst one be?
What would be the food that if you couldn't have that anymore, you'd just say, "No, I'd just rather go ahead and
I'll just die.
Yeah. Is there a food like that? Or?
Well, it's something you would give up, like, oh yeah, I'll trade kumquats
for immortality?
You're going in the opposite direction.
That's the easier direction.
I don't know.
I think it's really more expansive, maybe. Dessert?
Can I name a
never
category?
have dessert.
So if you
again.
could live an extra couple hundred years, but you would never be able to enjoy a dessert.
That wasn't for me. That was for Jordan.
Oh, well. I mean, that would not be good. That's so long to not have any chocolate or ice cream or
Cake, puddings,
cake, pie,
pie,
cheesecake,
cookies.
hot chocolate.
So you're saying you just don't want to live.
Well,
You don't want to live forever.
no,
You want to
no.
eat these things and die.
That's
is what
true.
you're saying.
Yes,
Okay.
Not right now.
eventually.
Eat food and die. That's your
That's
view.
the plan.
If that's the thing, that you live until you eat this one thing, that's not bad, because then you just pick something and you're like, last meal, and we're good.
Well, that's a different question. Y'all are horrible at this game.
'Cause I like most types of food too much to...
So then your answer is the same. You just want
See, that's the whole reason that they want this curse undone, is because it's horrible. They can't, they say it's the half-life. It's not...
Yeah, but I'm narrowing it down to one.
just one.
What one thing
thing.
missing would make living for hundreds of years unbearable?
Oh.
Maybe like salt or gluten.
Gluten. MSG.
You can never eat. All right, that's it. Just take me now.
All right, we're gonna move on. Y'all are horrible at this game.
What's your answer?
I don't have to have an answer.
Oh, well, that's
I came up with the
interesting, isn't
game.
it?
Make your own rules. Let's see how it is. Make the rules you do.
All right, so moving on.
Moving on. We're at the point where we need to talk about, are there any standout things as you think about this first Pirates movie, that standout things that you either liked or you thought were exceptional or that didn't work so well for you?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really think the music is pretty good. I like the score a lot. It's a good.
Yeah, the music's good.
Yeah.
For me, I think the opening scene, and we kind of talked about it when we were watching it, is that there seemed to be a really big age discrepancy between the young Miss Swan and the
Captain.
Was he captain, lieutenant?
He was some littler thing. Norrington.
Yeah. And, of course, he later has his eye on her as a potential wife.
When she
and-
grows up to be Keira Knightley.
Yeah. But she seemed really young, and he seemed fairly older, so it just seemed... the casting maybe on that, for ages, I don't know. Maybe they could have found
But they
somebody...
could have had a young Norrington.
Yeah, somebody else come in who could have portrayed him better, because it just seemed really skewed for age. And then when, of course, she grew up and was older, he was still pretty much the same.
He's cursed!
So
Never
I
ages.
think that was something I was like, kind of a little
Okay.
questionable for me.
All right. Carmen, what's your overall? And speak over here in this direction.
I would say that my overall impression of this movie, this is one of my favorite movies. Like, it's one of those, it gets increasingly cheesy here the longer the franchise goes, but I'm still down. I think one of the things that stands out the most to me about this franchise is that I would argue that nobody in the film at all is really all that good of a person.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that, of course, you have all these pirates who are, killing people and, all of this. But then you look at the
The good
Navy and
guys.
stuff. The good guys, maybe they aren't so good, that they all kind of bend for different things when it suits them. And sometimes it works out for people that you like a little bit more than ones that you don't. And then you're like, oh, you're a good guy, because I like those dudes. But it's not necessarily a great thing for anybody. Nobody's really all that good in this movie.
Right. It's just in the circumstance, one will do a better thing than somebody else or something
Yeah.
like that. Or the thing that works out well.
So I also like the costuming.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was really,
Yeah.
really
Some of
nice.
those costumes are really nice.
Even the uniforms
Mm-hmm.
and the pirates. They looked pretty good.
Like pirates.
The makeup was good.
And
Yeah.
some of them look so gross, and you're just like, oh, get away. Go back to the ocean.
I also thought that, because this is an older movie, because now I've started looking at movies to see, CGI. But the sequences where they turn from skeleton people back to the real
Fleshy,
people,
yeah.
those are actually pretty good. I think they've held up really nicely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like the big climax fight between Barbossa and Jack Sparrow, that they're both
Going back and
spoiler,
forth.
they're both skeletons at this point, and they go back and forth and they run through these spots of moonlight. So it's a skeleton and then a real person and a skeleton. It some points are a little bit but for the most part it's really a decent.
Yeah, it really has held its technical edge on that. I think even with when they're all walking underwater to go back to the ships,
That's still creepy.
Yeah, it doesn't look like like Terminator things way back when, where you're like, oh well, that's not so much, not so scary really. So yeah, I'd agree with
All
that.
right. Overall, Carmen's already said this is maybe her favorite movie.
It's one of my favorite franchises.
Oh, favorite franchise.
The whole thing.
Okay. So, what kind of letter grade would you give it?
I think this first one probably gets an A from me.
It's a real good, just kind of brainless summer
Yeah, it's
movie.
just a romp, summer
Yeah,
romp.
right.
Yeah.
That's all
It's
it's
a good
meant to
time.
be.
It's a good time.
And Jack Sparrow is a good character. He's
Yeah.
really
I really
unique
think
and-
Really memorable.
that's
Yeah.
maybe Depp's crowning achievement as being this
Yeah,
Captain Jack.
it
I
kind of
think.
trapped him though afterwards. Like,
But I think he really loved the character.
yeah, well, I think that comes out really clearly and stuff. But after this role, he does, like, you see.
Well, before this role, he was weird
Crazy.
things.
He actually, like, there's clips and stuff of him on, online where he talks to, he goes into the parks and stuff. He goes to Disneyland, actually, in California, dressed up as Jack Sparrow every so often. So, if you're in California going to Disneyland, you run into a Jack Sparrow, you might actually meet the real Jack Sparrow, because he'll just go and do that because he likes it so much.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. I would do it too.
All right. So, we
Hey.
will, you got
Hey.
overall. Hey. Oh, I thought you said hey.
Well, you asked Jordan. He said Carmen obviously
I
likes
thought you were
it.
talking pirate.
That's
Oh,
I.
that's arr.
Hey.
Different letter.
Hey, you skipped me. Savvy?
Oh boy.
Ew.
Well, there are some classic lines in here, too, like
Savvy.
savvy and the one I like, but why is the rum gone?
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Right.
And I really like just after that line when he's like going down the beach and he sees the ship coming in and he gets all like, you can see it on his face that he just mumbles to himself, "There'll be no living with her after this."
Right.
I've probably heard that too.
All right, let's go ahead and take our break, and we'll come back and talk about more thematic and worldview sort of things. We'll be right back.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ, our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
And we're back from our hidden island where someone has set all the rum on fire.
Oh no.
My word.
Now what are we going to do?
That can't be right. Okay, this is the point where we will talk a little bit more about what sort of morals and meanings are being preached, maybe even unintentionally, in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, The Curse of the Black Pearl. All right, one of the things that I noticed that I think we've all mentioned is, and I actually did a little bit of looking online about this and trying to do some research on it, but I guess there was a time in pirate history where there was something like what the movie references as a pirate code, but the movie kind of makes it sound like it's a very prevalent thing and all the pirates know about it.
Right.
And I think that's probably a very big exaggeration. It was probably in a limited place and a limited amount of time, there kind of was such a thing as a pirate code. And now the movie talks about it, and it specifically says, at first it sets it up as the pirates have this code, and this is how they live, and this is how they do things. But very quickly you begin to realize, they start saying it. They're more like guidelines, really. And
Suggestions.
right. And so they have a code, but none of them consider it to be terribly binding.
Right. No one really enforces the code.
Right.
Except for Jack Sparrow's
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they do.
And so I think this is related to other things in the movie, the way they talk about what ethics are. I think the whole movie kind of has this underlying tone that says yeah, there are rules, and we all live with rules around us, but sometimes if you're going to do the right thing, you have to break the rules.
Right.
And that's a very prevalent thing in the whole American mythos. Rules were made to be broken, and heroes know when to break the rules in order to do the right
you have to know
things.
which rules you can break and all this stuff.
Right. And biblically speaking, we live by a code, but it was a code given to us by God. And our belief about the law of God is that there's not going to be a situation where you have to choose between either obeying God or doing the right thing. I mean, they're always going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
Usually.
No, they're always going to be the same thing.
You'll have human laws that will say...
No, I said God's law. Between God's law and doing the right thing, there's no space. There's never a time where you have to say, well, I can't obey God for the sake of doing what's right here. And in fact, any sticky situation that you get into, it's that law word of God that's going to give you the direction.
As to what to do.
Now, the law of God may lead you to say, this is what I'm doing, and I don't care what other laws there are. I'm following the laws of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That there would be times when you'd have to make exceptions with man's law, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You had other ethical issues. You were talking about one at the end of the movie.
Well, I think it's basically what you're talking about, where right at the end, the Governor Elizabeth's dad is saying to somebody like...
Probably Norrington,
how he's like, well, maybe in this particular case, if piracy is the right course of action to do this thing, then maybe that's the only... it's this weird thing.
Right.
I think it's like, in the event that an act of piracy would achieve the proper thing, then, piracy is the proper thing. Something like that.
Right, yeah.
It's some English
it's the right course. I don't
fortune
know.
cookie thing.
The ends justify the means.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to.
Right. Oh, other things. This isn't really morals and meanings, but as I was looking and doing a little bit of reading, no surprise, the pirate mythos that runs throughout this franchise is probably about as realistic as like the Wild West gunfighter cowboy mythos is.
What?
So like half.
Right.
75% right.
Right.
You mean the Lone Ranger and Tonto? It's not real?
Well, what I was hearing some things, and now I feel bad about, I forget where I saw this, but Port Royal was a real place.
Yeah.
But when it was a real place, it was Tortuga. It was a horrible place, and it fell into the ocean pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Like all in one day. They had an earthquake and a typhoon and a hurricane, and
That was it?
and it was underwater in one day.
So
Everything
they were,
struck at once.
wow.
So,
They weren't doing good.
no.
Maybe a little judgment happening there.
Right. And nobody talks about that anymore because all of these disasters hit the actual Tortuga at once and just destroyed it.
Wow.
But the other stuff I was reading is, well, you know how in the movies it's the British government and it's the East India Trading Company that are really after the pirates.
Yeah.
But I think the British government's relationship to the pirates is much like the United States'
In guerrilla warfare?
relationship to ISIS.
Huh.
You know, from what I can see, there were times when the British government funded and supported pirates.
Right, the Buccaneer
Those
thing.
were
Right.
privateers. Is the ones that were. If you were officially sponsored by the state, you were a privateer. But
And then you were supposed to attack their enemies.
yeah, if
Right.
you were an English pirate and you sacked a Spanish ship, the English wouldn't necessarily say, "Oh, well, that's bad. You shouldn't do that."
Right.
But just make sure you take care of those guys.
Well, they demanded they'd hire them to go out and attack the Spanish fleet.
Uh-huh.
And they'd
take a percentage.
they'd take 25%. You can have 75 and we'll take 25.
Mm.
And which is, you know, the U.S. government is what created and funded ISIS and the Taliban.
Well, not just ISIS. There's a lot of groups.
Yeah, and now we're acting like these
Where
guys
these people come from?
Yeah. how'd they get all this U.S.-made weaponry and
Yeah, we gave it to him.
right.
Yeah.
And they're bad, and now we have to kill them. And, so there's nothing new under the sun. So, and then we were watching a show about, what was that show about the Warriors, the Ultimate Warriors, or?
Oh, I think it was something like the Ultimate Warrior or something.
Do you remember that show?
It's that old show where they did the computer-generated thing to figure out, and they did all this research about what like ancient warriors, well,
Their
historical
materials
warriors,
and,
not all
tools,
ancient, but like pirates and knights and Vikings
Cowboys.
and the
And
IRA.
they said there that most of the pirates were former British Navy.
Yeah,
And,
I
so
think
they
so.
had been trained and were not unfamiliar at all with how the British government worked and all of that. They were veterans. They were the dangerous veterans.
Yeah.
Okay, you had an ethical thing too that you were
I did,
mentioning.
but I was going to talk about something else.
Okay.
When you have Barbosa in charge, and he's the one that's regulating how the code is enforced, it seems like there's some wiggle room for him to agree to do things, and then yet if it's not completely specific, detailed, that he can take the good thing that he was supposed to do for you and turn it into something that's maybe not quite so good for
Right,
you.
right.
And I just think
Right, he's like a genie.
I was just going to say that. It's like the
and
old
that,
genie story.
and people kind of take that view and want to put it on God, that I have to do
Right,
I have to be really careful because then this other thing will happen, and I can't really trust him to be good or
Oh,
to
yeah,
be
that's a good point. Where people think, well, who is it? Oh, George Costanza on Seinfeld. He was terrified that God was going to see him being too happy.
Oh.
And,
that would be it.
and he would get him. But there is kind of that thing, I think you're right, where sometimes people can suspect that even when God blesses them with something good, that, I got to watch out now. What's
Will makes an agreement with him, let them go, put them on, make them be safe, and they're dumped in the middle of the ocean. Well, you didn't say where I needed to put them. You didn't say,
right.
And so I see a little bit of that in our culture, that there's that mistrust and that, well, you told me you were going to do something good for me, but are you really going to do something good for me, or is it going to be something just kind of good for me? And so I just thought about that when we were talking about the code and enforcing it and all that. So another thing that I had thought about, it's when Jack and Will are together on the boat, and it's just the two of them, and Will's struggling with working with a pirate.
Right, and finding out that his dad, who he had thought was just like a merchant sailor,
was just a guy out working.
Yeah, finding out that he was actually a pirate too.
Infamous pirate with a cool nickname.
The bootstrap. So he says, well, there are some things you can do, and there's some things you can't do.
Yeah, he tells him the only rules that really matter are what a man can do and what a man can't do. And that's quite a statement to make.
If you can live with what you've done, then...
If you personally, yeah.
Well, and it's in that same scene where he tells him, your dad was a good man, and
a pirate.
And he was a pirate.
Now, that gets repeated a few times, right? This idea that it's possible to be a pirate and a good man. And Carmen was talking about that during the break. Did you have something you wanted to mention about that?
Well, I mean, I think part of that goes into the justification that people will use. Like, going back to what you're saying, is the ends justify the means. That part of that is, oh, well, you're a good person, but you're being forced to do these sort of things. That if it wasn't for this ridiculous set of circumstances that made you go and become a pirate, you probably would have never done that. But then also, I think that goes into trying to say, like, just because you're one thing doesn't mean you can't be this other thing, that just, I don't know why I'm thinking it, but I'm thinking, like, soldiers, who have to go and they have to fight and they have to eventually probably, cause damage to other people, that, yes, this is terrible stuff that they're doing, but it doesn't mean that they're not good people, not good men doing what their job is, And that I know there's a lot of debate about that, whether or not
Yeah, assuming it's a just war.
Yeah, assuming it's a just war, all this different
right.
stuff, having to justify what you're doing versus who you are as a person. So
Yeah, sure.
and I think that's wrong. It's the wrong kind of way to go about that because you aren't justified by your definition of a good person. You're justified by what God's definition of a good
Right.
person is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I think when we get into that is like, well, I'm still a good person. Like, regardless of this other thing I do, I'm still a good person.
Right.
That's probably a good idea that you're probably not as good as you think you are.
Well, that's in a lot of movies. That's almost like that's almost a mainstay of American civil religion. This idea that you can do bad things and still be, at heart, you're a good person. We have so many movies where the hero is a bad guy and an outlaw. It's just that when a hero needs to rise up, he's suddenly the one who does, and he suddenly cares.
Yeah.
You have that, like Wolverine, I'm thinking, and all the Clint Eastwood cowboys in those early movies, and with the anti-hero, really, that he's been a bad guy his whole life, but now when the poop really hits the fan, he's gonna stand up and be a hero. And you have the classic things like the hooker with the heart of gold and stuff like that. And the whole thing in Breaking Bad is like that. All the characters are bad guys, but
Well, it's just that some of them you like more. It's just that you're shown the story from some of the points of view and not the others.
Right.
You're just asked to identify with one particular of these all bad guys.
Was it you, Mom, that was saying there was another interesting issue? It almost seemed like once Will Turner found out that his father was a pirate, now it's almost like he feels himself sliding into becoming a pirate himself.
Slipping into the boots.
Right. What Bootstrap did is going to pull him up or down by his own bootstraps, and he's like inevitably going to become a pirate, and he has to figure out some way to be okay with that.
Right. Well, and even before he really realizes that, he has sort of made that step into like illegal activity. I mean, he stole that's grand theft ship, and he broke a man out of prison,
But that was all to save his love.
It was all for love.
But those are still the things that
he really did.
all summed. He's a pirate now anyway.
Yeah,
he's
right.
an outlaw
You're
for
right.
sure. Yeah.
You're right. But there was that kind of bit of determinism, though.
Yeah.
Like it was a fate that he almost couldn't deny, and he couldn't.
Well,
really
isn't
get
that
away.
part of the reason that Elizabeth took the coin on the necklace away from him, because she didn't want him identified as a pirate?
Oh, right,
It's got a
right
skull
at the
on it.
first, yeah.
Because it's his.
Right, it's
and
his
she took
coin.
it. So is she a pirate?
Well, she's a thief.
She is a pirate, though. She does
turn into like the queen of the pirates or something like that in one of the later.
Yeah.
Asking to parlay with the...
Right. She
Somehow
knows all
she
this
knows the
code stuff.
and the songs.
Yeah.
Well, we do actually have that sort of thing, because what I'm talking about is a materialistic determinism where you can't escape your biology, you can't escape your heritage, and culture comes out of blood instead of ethics and beliefs. And there is this idea called kinism going around that basically says, like, if an American couple adopts a Korean child, that Korean child will develop a Korean culture. And it won't be an American culture, it'll be Korean, because his culture is in his veins and it's going to come out. And there's nothing biblical about that idea at all. But
Sounds odd to me.
well, it is odd. It's a way of justifying like racial supremacy and stuff like that. White culture is supreme and stuff like that. And it must be because it's a blood thing. And
that it's not your fault you're the best. It's because that's just what you are, which isn't correct. That's another justification.
Don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
Yeah. It's another one of those situations where you're trying to justify something based on something you can't control.
Right.
And if you're starting to try and shove off blame like that, then again, I think you're probably feeling a little bit of guilt about it.
Probably.
Yeah, if you're willing to recognize, I need an excuse for this. You know.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement that just for what it is, I don't think the movie makers that did this set out to, make a statement about anything.
Yeah.
It was just,
I mean,
it's the cinematic equivalent of a roller coaster
It's a movie
ride.
based on a boat ride in a theme park.
You're right.
You
It's
know?
pretty good.
I mean,
pretty good.
But that's what it is.
Both of them.
Yeah, the whole thing.
The ride is good.
Source material was A1.
That always helps.
So we're in agreement that it's a pretty good movie, pretty decent. There's no cussing or nudity or anything like that. There's
There are bloomers.
There's pirate cussing, like.
yeah, right. And there's some double entendre here and there. But
It's
just
really pretty good movie. Family movie.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
fun time. All right. In spite of all the witchcraft and magic of the stuff, but
No, that was another movie.
that's what pirates are into. All
That's when
right.
they bring Barbossa back.
Oh,
It's time to bring this ship into port and
No!
tie it up to the pier.
No! You're going to make us walk the plank.
We're loaded down with treasure.
oh boy.
Stone rum.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me here, and thank you all for listening. Worldview Media Podcast,
Yes?
a proud part of the Reconstructionist Radio Network, your
Yes.
one-stop audio shop for all your dominionizing needs.
I didn't know if you were going to get it in. Here we are at the very end.
Nailed it.
Definitely didn't blow it. I don't think.
All right. All right. So y'all go out and serve Christ even in the areas of arts and entertainment. Learn how to communicate a Christian worldview without having to sew little crosses on all the shoes,
Yep. Even while boating.
even while boating. Probably not while pirating, but while boating.
Yeah, you can sail.
Yeah, boating is okay.
Pirating is a two-hand activity. You can't be doing other stuff.
All right. Say goodbye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Oh.
Oh, you're so funny.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.